Good morning. This is Craig Chamberlain. I'm talking about episode 3, which we're going to talk about would Christ change the nation's laws for good? Now, this is one I'm pretty excited about talking about. There's some very interesting ideas that are floating around out there about how we are going to, how the Christian movement wants to currently communicate its message of love. And one of them in particular is the idea of getting politicians into office that will help to restore or mandate the Christian principles back into the Constitution, or will fight for more Christian-based ideas in the world. Now, I'm excited about that my brothers and sisters are charged up about that idea. But there's some things I think we've lost along the way. The idea is there's two different types of things you can do. There's resisting evil, and then there's attempting to stop it. Laws were obviously created not to completely stop one thing or another, but they were meant to discourage. And they're a great form of resisting evil. And there is a quote in Scripture that Jesus talks about when he talks about resisting evil. And he does say that, I tell you, do not resist an evildoer. On the contrary, whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. That's Matthew 5:39. Now, there's a lot of controversy over this particular form of Scripture, and they meant it. People meant it in a physical sense. Somebody slaps you, don't fight back. And then there's the idea of law-based resistance. Do you resist evil in the law? But the focus is a little mixed up, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. One of the primary focuses is to change the law, and the problem is that the laws of the society reflect the actual people in that society. So if we see our laws starting to fail, we are desperately trying to get those laws reinstated. But that's not really the root of the problem, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Is the root of the problem isn't the laws themselves. The root of the problem is the people who are in that society, in the nation itself. We have corrupt laws, or the laws are becoming corrupt because we as people are becoming corrupt, and that's actually a sign of an unhealthy nation. Now, that begs the question, do we resist evil? Well, of course we do. We just don't do it in like I said, that Scripture is more of in a physical sense. It means don't fight back if somebody attacks you. But if you see a loved one, or you see a danger, and you want to protect others, obviously you want to create a law that will help protect other people. That's what we do with loving others. But we're fighting this war, it seems, on the wrong level. What we want to do is we don't want to go in and just mandate Christianity, because when we go in and we say abortion is flat out wrong in all cases, which I don't think anybody actually says that, but when you go in there and you say, there's always that 1 or 2% where people get real, it's a very difficult decision, whether it's the life of the mother, but that's a very tiny number. But let's just say that as an example, because it's a controversial aspect. If we go in there and we try to flat out say, change the laws, everyone will all of a sudden accept that abortion is wrong. But that's just not how it's going to work. You're going to go in there and you're going to change the law and make abortion illegal, but you still have this huge number of society that still don't believe that it's evil. And what's going to happen is that law is going to get subverted. And that's just how it is. The laws don't educate. They don't teach. Christianity teaches. Religion, and Jesus taught. He didn't go in and mandate good or evil. So when we try to go in and just change the laws to think that will fix our problems, it really will not. Our responsibility does fall more on the educational level, and Jesus did that in his own life. He had a small group of disciples, 12 people, and he walked with them on a daily basis, and he taught them his word, and they educated him as to why these are important ways to live your life. He was the living example of why that was an important way to live your life. And I think a lot of us really struggle with that, a lot of us modern day Christians, and the idea is that we want to just go in and change the law and then let society be okay with that. The society's not going to be okay with that. We need to go in and not just change the laws. In fact, I would argue that it's more important for us to try to change the hearts and minds of those that are close to us, just like Jesus did. And by communicating that love of Christ and by growing in relationships with people and letting them understand why this way of life and Jesus as a relationship with God works, you'll start to see the laws change over the long period of time. Because what you have is you have a huge number of people who are communicating the love of Christ to a small group of people, who those people will then communicate the love of Christ to another group of people, and eventually the idea is you have a society where they understand why the principles of God are important, and the laws will start to reflect that. So what has happened is we are, as an unhealthy nation, becoming corrupt, and that's something that starts from the bottom up, not the top down. So we're going in, we're trying to change the top, trying to change the laws, we're trying to change the effect of an unhealthy nation, but we're really not fighting the cause. It's almost like putting a Band-Aid over a problem that really isn't going to solve the root of the problem. And the root of the problem with society and with men and women and people in general has always been the heart of man. So let me see what my next point was here on the list. The idea of Christian politicians. I think this is why you don't see a lot of politicians in office that are, fully blown Christians. There are some, but it's got to be the most difficult job in the world. I mean, think about it. The idea of a politician is that you have to be voted in by the world. The world has to accept you, and the idea of Christianity in general is that the world's going to hate you. That's the whole principle behind it. Is you're going to be making decisions that they don't agree with. You're not going to be following in their same lifestyle. In other words, you're going out with your friends, and they might want to party, and you're just like, no, I'm not really, I don't really want to do it. I'll hang out with you, but I don't really like to drink. They don't understand that. You're not doing it trying to judge them, and you're not trying to say, well, you're evil because you drink. It's not the way of life you want to live, and that's okay. But the world doesn't understand you. So it's really hard to be a Christian politician, to get into power with those principles that go against the world. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of genuine Christian politicians in office. It's also why you don't see a lot of genuine Christian actors that make it on television and in movies. And some of them slip through the cracks. I'm not saying there's none of them. But I think that's why they're not popular, and that's why they tend to fall by the wayside after a while, because their ideas are wildly unpopular. Now, again, we're talking about a top-down or a bottom-up approach. Jesus' teachings were a bottom-up approach. His idea was to change the hearts and minds of those who are close to you and to create a relationship of love and compassion for those that are around you. And that's contagious. It is contagious. I've been witness to that myself.